So ever since I made this particular video calling out the evil practice of child marriage in the Islamic world, not child marriage, child, yes, I have been getting all sorts of hateful messages from the perpetrators and supporters of this evil I discussed in that video. If you haven't watched that particular video, guys, you should go watch it. It is almost at 1 million views now. It is a huge nugget, and believe me, you are going to be thankful you watched it. So that video has been giving me so much flack, but best believe that no amount of hate messages would be able to stop me from calling out this related evil that shares a lot in common with that previous video of mine. So, I recently came across this BBC News report captioned, "Selling Children to Survive. Afghan Fathers Forced to Make Impossible Choices." Afghan fathers forced to make impossible choices. Choices like selling their 2-year-old daughters to full-grown adult male for money. I'm so mad, guys. I am so enraged. But before I even start unleashing my anger on the BBC for using very misleading euphemisms to express this horror going on in Islamic parts of the world like Afghanistan, before I unleash my anger on the BBC for trying to humanize and show empathy to some of the villains in this incident rather than the victims, let us first take a look at this particular video in question. Let's see the Afghan fathers and let's see what this is all about.
This country is reeling under one of the worst hunger crises in the world, caused by a swirl of factors. International aid cuts, the Taliban government's policies, and natural disasters. We've driven into the rural communities nearby. At Abdul Rashid Azimi's home, we're suddenly confronted by the devastating impact. He calls for his daughters. Rukia and Rohila are twins. They're 7. Abdul is eager to explain why he's making unbearable choices. I'm ready to sell my daughters. I'm poor and in debt. I come home with parched lips, distressed and confused. My children come to me saying, "Baba, give us some bread." But what can I give? Where is the work so I can earn? It breaks my heart, but it's the only way to feed my other children, Abdul says.
Ah, you freaking piece of shh. You human waste. You degenerate descendant of evil Mahmoud. Police be upon him. It is not the only way. You selling one of your 5-year-old daughters to an adult old man for marriage is not the way, let alone the only way to provide for your family. By the way, why do you have so many kids at all if you have to sell one of them to feed the others? Why do you have a family to begin with? Why? So this man thinks that the only way to provide for his other children is to sell one of his little daughters. Now, we're not talking about selling this little baby to be an errand girl or even a domestic worker. We are talking about selling her to be a wife to an adult male. A wife. And this animal of a man has the audacity to give us fake tears and theatrics, claiming that this is the only way. How can this be the only way when you have not even tried selling yourself, sir? This man accumulated a debt himself, but now he wants to pay off his own debt by pimping out his own baby? What an abomination. I mean, look at these little girls' faces. I think their name is Rakia and Rohila. They look terrified. They don't even understand that they are being prized out like livestock for marriage and worse, to grown men. This is a father commodifying his own flesh and blood's innocence. The representation of a failed father. This man's secret duty as a man in any decent society under any moral code worth respecting is to protect his children at all costs, to sacrifice himself, to starve so they eat, to work dangerous jobs, to beg, to scrape, or fight for their safety. But what do we see here? We see a man lamenting that because there is no job and he has debts and he has hungry mouth to feed, he is going to pimp out one of those hungry mouth to save himself. BBC is here making this man to be the victim, sympathizing with him, trying to humanize his action, writing, Afghan father makes impossible choice. But they don't even care about the little girls in question who is being destroyed, whose future is being torn apart, whose life is being turned upside down, who is going to bear the pain of being in this sort of marriage at the age of 5. Now, I understand that there is extreme poverty in places like Afghanistan. Life is hell in Afghanistan, especially more under the Taliban rule. But even extreme poverty will never force a reasonable father to sell his 2-year-old daughter as a wife to a full-grown adult. Yes, I said 2 years old. I've seen children being sold at the ages of maybe months, maybe 9 months old. You wait for them to get to 6, then you come marry them off. It is happening there. Why are the daughters the currency? Why not sell his labor into indentured servitude? Why not the teenage sons polishing shoes or collecting trash? Why specifically the prepubescent girls? Why is the first solution to their poverty troubles selling of very underage little girls? After all, Afghanistan is not the only country battling with extreme poverty. So many countries across the world, including many African countries, are facing the same problem. Even Africans are facing it on a larger scale, I can argue that. But these African countries don't systematically auction off toddler daughters for, well, unless these African countries are Islamic countries. Then we see the same thing happening in Afghanistan repeat itself there, like we saw in that Somali video, that Somali child video. So why is it that anywhere Islam is prevalent, the little girls are never safe? Well, because in all of this Islamic culture, girls are viewed as economic assets to be traded for bride prices. Boys are future providers, and girls, they are disposable bargaining chips for debt relief or short-term survival. In strict interpretations of their holy book, girls at marriageable age, as long as they are mature, that is their marriageable age, mature, just like mature Aisha at the mighty and gigantic age of 6 years old. Okay, now this practice is embedded in their Sharia customs. The Taliban bans girls from secondary education and any type of work. In fact, they're not, God, you need to read up on what is happening in the Taliban in Afghanistan. They are trapping families in cycles where their daughters become the exportable treasures, the exportable resources. Bride price traditions turn these little girls into debt settlements. Fathers accumulating debts, then offloading those debts onto their daughters' futures. Sell her at 2 or at 5 years old so the family eats. One father in the same report in this particular video already sold his 5-year-old daughter for medical bills, with marriage to a relative's son planned when she now turns 10. Imagine that. Philia, enabled by culture and religion, rebranded as survival. In 2026, with all the world's progress, this medieval barbarism persists in the Islamic world. Now, what annoys me more than this disgraceful man posing as a father is the BBC's infuriating coverage of this incident. They were more concerned about humanizing the so-called heartbroken father without even sparing a thought for the victims, the little girls in question. But I'm not surprised though, because this is typical of legacy media. The headline, Afghan fathers make impossible choices. Soft focus on the men's tears, their anguish, and their devastating impact. They mention selling these girls for marriage, but they frame the fathers as sympathetic victims of circumstance. Where is the unfiltered outrage for the girls' terror, BBC? The systemic condemnation of a society that treats their daughters this way. The link to Taliban ideology and broader patterns across Islamic regions. Instead, what we hear are all sorts of euphemisms to soften the blow of this horror. Child marriage instead of child survival instead of pimping out minors. This is a narrative smoothing, classic leftist instinct to avoid Islamophobia or cultural judgment. Blame poverty, blame Western legacy, blame sanctions, anything except the internal civilizational failure. If you watched the longer BBC video on this incident, you would see the crazy BBC journalists blaming America for cutting aid to Afghanistan. They would rather blame America than blame the Taliban or even Islam, the culture of Islam. Taxpayer-funded British journalists humanizing the perpetrators while the victims' innocence is battered away. It is not neutral journalism. It is complicit in downplaying evil to protect a preferred worldview. Real reporting would scream, "This is child exploitation. This is incompatible with civilized norms," and demand accountability from the culture enabling this. But not BBC. They wouldn't. Oh, Afghan fathers. Heartbroken. They are making impossible choices. Shame on the BBC and shame on these so-called fathers, disciples of Muhammad. These guys are not men. A real man doesn't look his 5-year-old in the eye, kisses her forehead, and says, "Oh, your body will pay my debts. Your body will pay my bills." No, he doesn't. He stands between her and the monsters. He dies first if needed. He does everything he can to protect the little ones. These fathers are failing the most basic test of masculinity and fatherhood. They are villains in their daughters' stories, not victims. Calling them out is not cruelty. It is moral clarity, and that is exactly what I'm doing. Because selling a child into what amounts to be slavery or consummated is evil. Full stop, no excuses. The underlying Islamic cultural framework that normalizes this deserves harsh scrutiny and reform. BBC and other similar outlets are smoothing barbarism, but it is high time we call out this and call it what it is, which is legalized evil against little female kids. Dear Rokia and Rohila, and to other girls like you all deserve better. You deserve fierce protection, a world that values you beyond transactions, and a world that sees your pain. You deserve to grow up and fulfill your destinies instead of ending up broken and battered under an old man's body. Shame on these Mohammedan men, and shame on the BBC. But as always, guys, these are my thoughts and my opinions. Please feel free to share yours in the comment section below, but do so respectfully. Also, if you're not subscribed to this channel, honestly, I don't know what you're waiting for. Subscribe to the channel. Like and share this video to keep people informed, and consider joining my membership or buying me a coffee if you like, as a way of supporting this channel. Thank you for watching the video, and I hope to catch you on the next one. For now, peace.